qualities. Please pardon us. We offer our respectful obeisances unto you. Purport. Lord Yamaraj took upon himself the responsibility for the offense committed by his servants. If the servant of an establishment makes a mistake, the establishment takes responsibility for it. Although Yamaraj is above offenses, his servants, practically with his permission, went to arrest Ajamil, which was a great offense. The Nyaya Shastra confirms, Vitkya parade swamino dandaha. If a servant makes a mistake, the master is punishable because he is responsible for the offense. Taking this seriously, Yamaraj, along with his servants, prayed with folded hands to be excused by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's the end of the purport. Okay, Om Jnana Timandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Paragamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavam Shri Rupam Sagrachatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sijivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijanam Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakamvitam Nischa. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagapate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchane Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Svancha Kapaturibhesha Kripa Sindhu Bhyevacha Patitanam Bhavanembhyo Vaishnavembhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So if I would have left my body while chanting those holy names, the Yamadutas wouldn't have come. So I think it's King Kulashekar says that now, because since my body is healthy and my mind is clear, let me leave my body at once, because in this healthy state it's easy for me to remember Krishna. But if I wait until I'm diseased and I'm old, it may be very difficult to remember Krishna because I'm in pain or my mind is not very clear. So Ajamil actually is not known as a Vaishnav previously. He was known as a Brahmana who followed Vedic rituals. Very good Brahmana. But due to his downfall, we all know that he became sinful. But because of the culture of Bharatavarsha, the culture is so nice that inherent within the culture, parents often name their children divine names, like Narayan, for example, which was the name of his youngest son. He actually had children when he was in his late 80s, and Prabhupada states in a purport that this shows how sinful he was, because according to the Varnashram system, at the age of around 50, one's supposed to take vanaprastha, eventually sannyas, and meditate to attain moksha, liberation. But Ajamil forgot this due to his sinfulness and his attraction to material sense gratification. Even up until the old age of almost 90 years old, he was having children because Narayan was actually still a child, was a baby at the time Ajamil left his body. So we also see this. I think it was Mick Jagger from the Rolling Stones. He recently had a child also, and he's like a walking skeleton. You know, he's like almost 90 years old or something like that. And people do not know the goal of life. Prahlad Maharaj says, Natevidu Swarakatamhin to Vishnu, that materialistic people, they don't understand that the goal of life is to worship Vishnu. And that is actually the purpose of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, is to remind people of what they have forgotten. And that's what Prabhupada says to a reporter when the reporter asks, "Why have you come, Swamiji?" He says, "I've come to remind you of what you have forgotten." So I'm actually very grateful to be here in Gita Nagari. I'd never been here before, my first time. I've always wanted to come here, but it's been out of my way. It's hasn't been somehow or another, destiny has not arranged for me to come here. But now I'm here, and for the first time, I got divine darshan of Radha Damodar. It's actually very dear to my heart. Um, I read Radha Damodar Vilas. I'm very inspired by Vishnu Jan Swami and Tamal Krishna Maharaj and the whole Radha Damodar party and their book distribution and them making devotees. And Prabhupada was also on the bus at one point, and it's just so amazing. And Vishnu, when I think of Radha Damodar, I think of Vishnu Jan Maharaj, and that's actually the glory of the devotee, is that when you think of the Lord, there's a devotee attached to the Lord. You don't just think of Krishna alone, you also think of his servants. So yeah, Radha Damodar for me is Vishnu Jan Swami being so attached to his service, to their service, their divine lordship, Shri Shri Radha Damodar. And Tamal Krishna Maharaj and Vishnu Jan Maharaj, they were like a dynamic duo. Vishnu Jan Maharaj was so attractive in his kirtan and his personality, and he's very charismatic and very loving, and so everybody was attracted to him. Not by force either. Although he was a sannyasi, before he took sannyas, he was living in Los Angeles for some time. He was the Bhakta leader there and the Harinam leader. And devotees are describing that, yeah, even though he was in the position of a leader, we followed him because we loved him, not because he would force us to do anything or he would tell us to do anything, tell us to do something, and oh, he's a leader, therefore we have to do it. Out of spontaneous love, because we knew that he loved us. He had that type of personality to attract people's heart, that we just wanted to serve him and be with him all the time. And Vishnu Jan Maharaj was so absorbed in his worship of Shri Shri Radha Damodar and traveling in the bus and doing kirtan for hours every day. They would bring the deities out, actually, Shri Shri Radha Damodar, out of the bus in like a movable altar, and they would set up like a whole elaborate puja right in some park in some city somewhere. Vishnu Jan Maharaj would be doing kirtan, playing harmonium, and there would be a full elaborate puja right before Shri Shri Radha Damodar. They'd pass out the prasadam to the guests, and like this, it made so many devotees. Many people just joined the bus just from that that program because it was so attractive. And then eventually, Shri Shri Radha Damodar's illustrious pastimes, they wanted to come here and to Gita Nagari Dham, a very special place. And Bhakti Tirtha Swami was here. I mean, so much amazing history. I've always been attracted to this place, but it's my first time here. And you hear like Radhanath Swami gives a 5-hour class about Bhakti Tirtha Swami. Because Radhanath Maharaj was here at the time where Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj left his body. And what happened was Radhanath Swami had a full schedule of engagements of preaching engagements going here, there, and everywhere in the world. And him and Bhakti Tirtha Swami were basically best friends. And then Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj called Radhanath Swami. I forgot where he was, but he says that basically like I'm on my last days on this planet. I want you to come here to Gita Nagari and I want to die in your arms. That's what he says. And Radhanath Swami dropped everything, dropped his whole schedule, and came here to Gita Nagari. And he was thinking actually that he would just be here for maybe a few days or a week, something like that, because then Maharaj was going to leave his body very soon. But he actually stayed within his transcendental body for, I think, like another couple or a few months or something like that. And because they had such a close relationship, Radhanath Maharaj canceled all his preaching engagements, all his travel plans, and he stayed here with Maharaj, and they had intimate, very divine, intimate moments together where basically it was just them in the room for a long time. And then, so when Maharaj left his body, went back to Godhead, Radhanath Swami shortly after that gives a 5-hour class. And I've listened to that class actually many, many times, like no exaggeration, at least like 50 times. Because I used to work in the kitchen in New Dwarka. That was like one of my first services. And I would listen to that class every day because it was so inspiring about Maharaj's life and where he grew up in the ghetto and then how he became like a Christian preacher. He actually grew up like with a stutter, like he couldn't speak properly. But then when it came to talking about Jesus or the Bible, he spoke like perfectly. There was no stutter. And then he goes on to explain how he joined the movement, how he became like the biggest book distributor in the movement, selling whole sets of Bhagavatam to different universities and colleges, how he went to um, Europe, Russia. Behind the Iron Curtain was heavy communism, where there were no African people there. Everybody was white. And here he was, an African American. Obviously, he stands out. When you're in a country where all you see is one race, if a person from a different background comes, it's like everybody. It's like a culture, not a culture shock, but yeah, something to look at. Like people are like, whoa, look at that person. That's a black person. I never seen one before, or whatever. And but he was in a communist country doing something considered illegal. Obviously, it's not illegal according to God, but it was illegal in the eyes of the government. And if he would have got caught, he would have gotten some serious repercussions. In prison for years, maybe even tortured, like we read in the Salted Bread book about the Russian devotees being tortured in prison, and a couple of them were even killed, and horrible. So Bhakti Tirtha Swami was risking living a life like that, having to suffer like that in prisons, just to spread Srila Prabhupada's movement. He was living on freight trains so that nobody would know where he was. Low key, he would have to chant japa in like public restrooms, like quietly, like whisper. He was chanting, I think it was 42 rounds a day, something like that. I forgot exactly. 40 something rounds a day. And then all day he would be distributing the Bhagavatam sets on like a pre-order. Like he didn't have them physically, but he would convince people to buy the set and then they would send the set to him. So many amazing stories. Uh, and then, yeah, he spent his final days here. And that one, at least on YouTube, I'm not sure if it's the actual last kirtan, but on YouTube, there's something called Bhakti Tirtha Swami Last Kirtan. And this is when one of his legs was amputated because they were trying to get the cancer out, but unfortunately it spread throughout his body. His body was very skinny. And then when you understand his dedication and his sincerity to serve Srila Prabhupada and how much service he did throughout the world, in Africa and here in America, and just inspiring everybody worldwide. And then to understand that this soul is about to leave his body, and he's not fearful. He's very grateful, actually, seeing it as Krishna's divine plan. And that last kirtan, um, Jai Jai Radhe Jai Jai Sham, Jai 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 Vrindavan Dham. So very powerful. I used to listen to that every day too. Anyways, getting back to the verse, I'm just saying I'm very grateful to be here. So, um, okay. So it's quite interesting. The Yamadutas are servants of Yamaraj, and they actually came because they understand that Ajamil throughout his life was sinful. They wanted to take him to the court of Yamaraj so that he can be punished. But what's really interesting is, we may think that the Yamadutas in our mind, like in our imagination, that they're these like really evil people that like sadistically get pleasure out of just punishing people. And that's what they're into. That may be there, but they also have an understanding that the punishment is meant for the purification of the soul. And they explain this in the first chapter of this canto, the last verse. Tata enam danam pane sakasham kritam kilbisham nishyamo kritanirvesham yatra dandena shudyati. And this is Yamaduta speaking to the Vishnudutas. This man Ajamil did not undergo atonement. Therefore, because of his sinful life, we must take him into the presence of Yamaraj for punishment. There, according to the extent of his sinful acts, he will be punished and thus purified. So they understand that, yes, he will be punished, but he will be purified. And without this purification, because he did not undergo atonement in this particular lifetime, he has to undergo atonement by force and punishment in the hellish planets, and thus be purified. And then, Prabhupada makes the statement that, Manu Sumita, if someone murders another person, it's best for the murderer to actually be killed in this life by execution from the government, because that frees him from the sinful reaction of having to suffer in consequent lifetimes. So it's actually for the betterment of the soul, those sinful living entities going to hell. Why does Krishna make hellish planets? Is he like getting pleasure out of people's suffering? And if you don't follow my orders, if you don't love me and worship me, I'm gonna just like kill you and make you suffer and burn in hell. Um, it's tough love. Just like, when a parent, if a child is being disobedient and rebellious and is actually getting himself into trouble, which is against own his own self-betterment, then the parent might be really tough on the child, and the child might have to learn the hard way. But as the years go by, if the child was corrected, then they come to understand out of maturity uh, through an older age, they come to understand that their parent was actually very merciful. I remember when I was a little kid, my father pulled off the freeway on some exit and he says, I want to show you something. He brought my sister and I like down the road and he showed us a dog that got hit by a car. And it was a very brutal scene. It really stuck out to me. I was maybe like 6 years old or something like that. And you could see just the intestines and the ribs. I remember the ribs were just sticking out and blood all over the road. And he showed us that to teach us that you don't just run into the street, you got to look both ways. And that was a very intense experience for me, seeing that as a little child. But it stuck in my mind. But yeah, I don't want to end up like that dog. I gotta make sure I don't run out in the middle of the street. So that's an instance of some tough love. It's kind of unconventional, but it actually did the trick. Um, and he also said when I was a teenager, I was getting into some trouble, and he he uh he mentioned to me years later. He said, if you were ever to get like addicted to some heavy drugs like meth or heroin, which fortunately I never did, but my father said I already had a plan for you. I was going to bring you to uh my uncle's farm, his uncle's farm out in the middle of nowhere, and basically just like tie me up so that, I can't go anywhere or do anything stupid. He would bring me food and have facilities for everything I need to do, like clean myself and stuff. But basically, just kind of like tie me up out there. So that's not out of his hatred for me, that's out of his love. So Krishna's the same way. He makes hellish planets for the purification of the conditioned souls. And that's actually the whole universal arrangement is meant for that one purpose, is to bring the souls back home, back to Godhead in our original states of Jivera Sarup Hoy Krishna Nityadas, being an eternal servant of Krishna. So now that we have actually also met representatives of the Vishnu Dutas in the form of the spiritual master, that's why we say, I was born in the darkest ignorance, my spiritual master opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge, out from my humble obeisances unto his lotus feet. So Ajamil was actually a disciple in one sense of the Vishnu Dutas. Vishnu Dutas can be considered his Vartma Pradarshaka gurus, one who introduced him to the path. And they actually brought him back home, back to Godhead. The very same three Vishnu Dutas came in a transcendental airplane, brought him back to Godhead after he performed sadhana and hardware. So we have also met the representatives of the Vishnu Dutas in the form of Srila Prabhupada and his transcendental servants in the ISKCON movement. We were also in the position of a Jamil, completely oblivious, living a sinful life, not even knowing that we're living a sinful life. And then Krishna comes and scoops us up in the form of his devotees. So now that we have been established within this ISKCON movement, we are also meant to act as Vishnu Dutas. People in this world, Brahmanda, Brahmate, Kona, Bhagavan, Jiva, Guru, Krishna, Prasadi, Pai, Bhakti, Lata, Bija, they're going up and down like a Ferris wheel, sometimes in heavenly planets, sometimes earthly planets, sometimes sinful planets, 8,400,000 species of life. And then we come and give them a book, invite them to the temple, give them prasadam in the holy name to wake them up. So we are acting just like the Vishnu Dutas, and someone who's just like a Jamil after the conversation of the Vishnu Dutas and Yamadutas, he was actually listening to that conversation, and he came to his senses and he realized that, oh my God, I've been an idiot. How did I deviate from my Brahminical culture? And then he actually didn't go back to Godhead. Then and there, he went to the holy place of Hardwar on the bank of the Yamuna, performed austerity, meditated on Vishnu, and then went back to Godhead. So in the same way, we preach to people, we give them a book, we invite them to the temples. It was like, yeah, the Vishnu Dutas are meeting them. They give them a book. Then they actually execute austerities and penance in Hardwar. That means, they join the Bhakti program, they join the Hare Krishna movement, and then it's just a matter of time that they go back to Godhead. So this chapter 3, Yamaraj is speaking a lot, and he's really explaining the difference between those attached to Vedic rituals and those who are bhaktas, devotees of Vishnu. And this is like one of the this whole story actually was based on a question that Parikshit Maharaj asked to Shukadev Goswami. But how is it that someone can atone for his sinful reactions, but actually, he's still like contaminated, like he still performs material sinful activities. And then Shukadev Goswami goes on to explain that actually the Vedic rituals to perform atonement, it's compared to if you're pulling weeds and you just pull the weed but you leave the root in the ground. It looks superficially like the weed is gone. You did your job. You did a great job. You picked all the weeds today. But if the root is still there, it's just a matter of a few days, the weeds are going to be back. So it's the same way with our material desires. Yogis or people, karmakandis, people performing Vedic atonement rituals. Yeah, okay, their sinful contamination seems to be gone. They're not performing any grossly sinful activities. It looks like they're living a pure life. But because the desire to become God is still there, and Prabhupada actually makes this point, I believe it's in the third canto. There's a purport that really stuck out to me that yogis, karmis, uh, jnanis, they may become elevated to a certain extent because the desire to still be God is still there within the heart. It doesn't chop the root. The root is still there. The jnanis, they want to become God by merging into the effulgence of God, becoming one with the Supreme. The yogis want mystic power to control material nature, control the material elements, and manipulate material energy, just like Krishna does. There's still a desire to become Krishna. The karmis want to enjoy their senses. Krishna is the supreme controller. So there's still material desire contaminated within all those processes. But in Bhakti Yoga, it's considered Anyabhalashita Shunyam Jnana Karma Dhyanavritam Anukulena Krishna Anushilanam Bhaktir Uttamam. This pure devotional service, Rupa Goswami says, no gyan, no karma, no contamination for those things, only pure devotion. Nadanam, 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 nasundarim, kavitam va jagadisha kamaye, rama janmani, janmanishvare, bhavatad bhaktira huiti ki twayi. No desire to accumulate wealth, no desire for enjoyment with the opposite sex, no desire for nadjanam, followers, people to think I'm great, people to adore me or worship me or whatever, subtly or grossly. Nor do I even desire liberation, Lord Chaitanya says. I only desire your causeless devotional service, birth after birth. This desire to become the supreme, even bhakti yogis can fall into this contamination, unfortunately, because we're coming from this background that for many lifetimes we've been wanting to become God and enjoy our senses. Then we come to bhakti yoga and we realize that's not where it's at. That's not how the soul is going to be supremely happy. Then we strive for pure devotional service. We understand the Siddhanta and we go for it full speed. We're trying to chant attentively. We're reading the books. We're waking up early, going to the morning program, worshiping the deities, distributing books, etc. But still, because this subtle contamination that I want to be the controller, I want people to think that I'm a good devotee. I want people to think I'm like, really good class giver, a really good pujari, really whatever it is. That contamination of wanting to be God is still there, which is completely self-contradictory. Because here we are serving God with the desire to become God. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. And as sadhakas, I'm sure many people can relate with that. And I know I fall into that a lot, and I have to check myself through my intelligence. I'm definitely not pure. I have an artist. I'm striving for the pure path, but still I catch myself. I want people to think I'm cool. I want devotees to like me. I want devotees to think I'm a great book distributor or whatever. It is completely illusory. That's Maya. That's called Maya. Serving God to try to become God. It's almost Mayavad. That's what the Mayavadis do. Yeah, some Mayavadis, traditional Mayavad, you won't even be able to tell the difference if your eyes aren't trained with knowledge. They chant Hare Krishna also. They read the Vedic literature. They worship Krishna also. Wow, okay, they're nice devotees. But what's their philosophy? What's their end goal? To merge with the Supreme. You get a guru, and then once you attain liberation, then you kick your guru in the face. I no longer need him anymore. So yeah, I'm worshiping the deity. I'm initiated Brahmana. I'm in the ISKCON Hare Krishna movement, and I'm trying to be the subtle contamination. It's very tricky. Spiritual life is a razor's edge. So how do we get rid of that? This is where the chanting of the holy name comes in. There's Nama Bas, there's Nama Barad, and there's Shuddha Nam. And Harinam Chintamani and Bhaktivinoda Thakur explains the different different offenses to the holy names, different Nam Aparads. And one of the he categorizes it that the 10th offense to be have complete faith, also to be attentive. Yes, this is he explains that not being attentive to the holy name, there's different categories. One of them is when the mind's just spaced out. You're chanting, but you're thinking of something else. Another type of inattentiveness to chanting is apathy. You just don't have any taste for it. You don't want to do it, but you're doing it just because you're supposed to be doing it, but you're not really interested. It's apathy. Uh, and then another one, what does he say? He says, give me a second. Anyways, I can't forget the third one. There's three of them. But basically what happens is if we're performing Nam Aparad, instead of watering the Bhakti Lata Bij, we're actually watering the roots, or not the root, I'm sorry, we're watering the weeds of material desire. And it's explained that this is why sometimes you'll see devotees that are practicing very strictly for some time, at least externally, it looks like they're doing very good. And then somehow or another, after time goes on, they just kind of fade out, or they lose desire for devotional service. So, like, how is that possible? Even after a couple decades, it's because of watering the weeds of material desire that it's very tricky and subtle. Srila Prabhupada says in a class I just heard recently that thinking of something and chanting the holy names is considered an offense. One should be very careful not to think of anything while chanting. I mean, it's just right there. You chant with your mouth and you hear with the ears. There's no room for the mind. Even a disciple asked Prabhupada, what about the mind when you're chanting? Prabhupada immediately cut him off. What are you speaking about the mind? You chant with your mouth and you hear with your ear. What's what's the question of getting your mind involved? So even without chanting purely, even with Nam Abbas, one is eligible for liberation. And this is what Bhaktivinoda Thakur says in Harinam Chintamani. Nam Abbas can award the 5 types of liberation. And of course, the devotees don't want Sayujya, Mukti, but those 4 other ones, 4 other types of liberation that are favorable for devotional service, one can attain just from Nam Abbas, which is very amazing. And one cannot force Shuddha Nam to manifest on one's tongue. It's by the mercy of Nam, which is non-different from Krishna, to manifest on the devotee's tongue purely. And this is where serving his pure devotees come in. When we please the pure devotees, Krishna is pleased. Yasya prasada bhagavat prasado, yasya prasada nakati kutopi. If you don't please the spiritual master, the pure devotees, there's no way in the world that Krishna is going to bestow mercy upon you. You can't just serve Krishna without acknowledging the spiritual master. So once the spiritual master is pleased, Krishna will bestow his mercy upon you. As long as he sees your endeavor to really try to hear the holy name, to really try to be sincere and become a pure devotee, with, on the other hand, you serving the mission of the spiritual master, you're getting maximum mercy to make spiritual rapid advancement. And so Ajamil, even though he chanted Nam Abbas, he was not meaning to chant the holy name of the Lord. He was chanting the name of his son. He still attained a sort of mukti, at least liberation from going to hell at that moment. And he was awoken to his senses to perform sadhana. And in this verse in the purport, Prabhupada is explaining that Yamaraj is begging for forgiveness from Vishnu, that my servants are so foolish. They didn't actually understand this very important point. Actually, the Yamadutas, according to Karma Kandya, according to the Vedic rituals, they were performing their duty nicely, actually. They understood the philosophy of, the Vedic principles. But this very important point that by chanting the holy names even once frees you from more sins than you can even commit. That's in the Puranas. There's a verse like that. They didn't understand this one point. Therefore, they were offenders of Ajamil, who was considered a Vaishnava. And so Yamaraj is begging for forgiveness, and Prabhupada is saying that if a servant of an establishment makes a mistake, the establishment takes responsibility for it. So it's quite amazing to see that in old age, the U.S. candidates, U.S. presidential candidates, I think Biden is in his 80s, Trump is late 70s or 80s or something like that. And they should have retired decades ago and performed austerity and Gita Nagari and became pure devotees and went back to Godhead. That is available to everybody. But they're fighting so hard, arguing with each other, completely engrossed in the goal of becoming the controller of the country, not knowing that they actually share a huge part of karma, a collective karma of all the residents of the country that they're trying to become leader of. I just imagine that, all the sins that go on in USA with the cow slaughter and everything else. You're taking that upon your head. For what? Not to make people devotees. That's one thing. The spiritual master takes the karma of the disciple. So if you're doing that to relieve people of their sinful reactions and teach them Krishna consciousness, that's very glorious. But if you're just doing it to become mundane leader for Pratishta, then you're really not doing something really horrible for yourself. You're paving the path to hell very, very quickly. Prabhupada says in a purport previously, like a few verses ago, he said there's no need to conduct research, so much research into the glory of the holy name. This one pastime alone of a Jamil becoming saved is sufficient to understand. Sarva dharma pritija mamekam shranam ruja aham tvam sarva papibhyo moksha yishyami ma shujaha. Abandon all these Vedic rituals. Abandon all this so-called atonement. It doesn't work in the long run. Just completely surrender unto me. Harinam, 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 Eva Kevalam. In this age, surrendering to Krishna means completely absorbed in the holy name. And you go back to Godhead. This is Krishna's promise. And I was just, I don't watch the news, nor do I read the news, but sometimes on my phone, uh, there's like pops up some like notification. I don't even know why it pops up. I never signed up for that, but recently some lady, she was like 30 years old, and her she died in her sleep, and she was healthy. She didn't have any health conditions. Her husband woke up, and his wife was dead, and no signs of foul play. It was just like some weird natural cause. And I looked into this, like, how does that happen? They call it sudden death, sudden untimely death syndrome, something like that. SUDS, SUDS. And it's not, it's not like a thing that happens all the time, but it's not rare. And some reasons is, there's like heart palpitations when you're sleeping. Some people will sleep in an awkward position where it's putting a lot of pressure on their heart if they're like sleeping face down. I think there's a whole list of reasons. But, imagine that you're sleeping, which is in the mode of ignorance. You're in wakefulness, you're trying to be a sincere devotee, but when you're sleeping, I've had so many random dreams that are not Krishna conscious, just like some bizarre things going on. Uh, Fortunately, by Krishna's mercy, some of them do have some tint of devotion, Krishna consciousness in there, but a lot of them are just random. Imagine if I were to die in my sleep thinking of just like some, like back in high school or something like that. I mean, what is my destination? Yam yam vapi smaram bhavam tyajantam te kalevaram. Whatever one thinks of at the time of death, he attains. Antaklechamaveva smaramukva kalevaram ya prayati tejanteham yati nasyatir samshayaha. Whoever thinks of me, Krishna is saying, at the time of death, he will attain me without fail. But if I'm thinking of like going back to high school, which is like a repetitive dream for some reason I have, and I die, then what do I have to take birth and go to high school again or something like that, unless some special mercy is bestowed upon me. Um, so what can we learn from this? We can actually prepare ourselves. And Prabhupada explains that Krishna consciousness means molding your life in such a way where you're constantly thinking of Krishna. And by the good fortune of uh, Kali Yuga, which sounds crazy because Kali Yuga is reaped with misfortune. One of the good fortunes we have is technology. I don't really usually glorify technology, but you can be listening to Prabhupada while you're sleeping, listening to his chanting, his japa or his kirtan, not too loud so you can fall asleep, and listen to his classes. I listen to his classes when I fall asleep. And also, uh, what we experience during the day creates samskaras in our consciousness that are stored in our subconscious, even for many years. And I'm sure everybody has experience of this, that sometimes I just randomly remember a song that I haven't heard in 15 years and I wasn't even really particularly attracted to. Like the other day, what song came up to my head? Like it's just like some stupid child riddle, like Humpty Dumpty or something like that, but I forgot what song it was. It's like, what is that, dude? I haven't listened to that for over 20 years. And it was just playing in my head, like, what's going on? So, what to speak of our past samskaras that right now we don't have any control of, but we can control the samskaras that we are creating in the present day. And my personal opinion, and I'm sure also people can agree, that one poison we have in this ISKCON movement is this right here. Oh wait, no, this. I almost showed you a picture of the screensavers. Godhar Pandit. That's not who I was talking about. I was talking about the phone, cell phone. It's uh, it's horrible actually. It wastes a lot of time. So on my cell phone, I have an app where I block everything. I can't go on Facebook. I can't go on YouTube. I can't even go on the internet. Um, if I need to ask a question or like figure out some information for something practical, I ask Meta AI on WhatsApp. All I have on my phone is communication apps, WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger to keep in contact with devotees, and GPS. So, because I drive a lot, I need to know where I'm going. Everything else is blocked, no social media, because I have fallen victim to social media in the past where I'm just scrolling for no reason. And it's like, it's ridiculous. And like, yeah, I have a lot of devotees on my Facebook, but I mean, wait a minute, but a lot of devotees are just posting Maya stuff, like not relevant at all to my life. And then it creates a samskar in my mind. I'm just scrolling, scrolling, scrolling. For what? What a waste of life. I just scrolled for a half hour. I could have been reading Prabhupada's books. I could have been memorizing shlokas. So many things I could have been doing. And I thought that I was alone in this struggle with cell phones. until I went to I went I won't tell you where I went because I don't want to point out the devotees, but I went somewhere where I was staying in a room full of devotees. There was a brahmachari staying right next to me. We're all sleeping on the floor. There was 13 or 14 of us in a room. And I kid you not, every single devotee, except for one devotee, because he's like an Indian background. He's like a Paka Pujari, and I don't know, he's a very serious devotee. But everybody else was just laying, scrolling on their phones, and and I saw the brahmachari next to me. It wasn't anything transcendental. He was playing video games. He was just watching mundane videos. Yeah, dude, we're wasting our life on these things, you know? So I really feel like, you know, I'm not a leader in ISKCON. I'm not a GBC or a guru or something, but I really feel like it would be healthy that like a guru instructs their disciples some, you know, I haven't really figured out all the details, but something of the manner that you're not allowed to use any social media unless it's specifically for preaching purposes, and you have to report to me all the preaching purposes you're doing on your phone, and you have to calculate how much time you're spending on your phone and how much time you get diverted and distracted. And you have to report this to me every week. You know, I think that would be like something healthy. Um, I have heard a story, I don't know if it's true or not, but you know, when telephones were fairly new, or not, in the days where cell phones did not exist in the 70s when Prabhupada was on the planet. And, you know, the temple had, temple devotees were asking Prabhupada if they can have one phone for the community where people can take turns making a phone call. And mind you, this is like when phones were still attached to the wall with like that cord. There was no screen on the phone, no internet, nothing like that. You can't take pictures with the phone. It's just you make a phone call. And according to the story, like I said, I don't know if it's true, so I would like to actually research this. But Prabhupada said, no, don't have a phone, because devotees will just call each other and speak pujalpa. I mean, wow, that's just to make a phone call. What to speak of what we have nowadays? Like, I really am curious what Prabhupada would think about us using cell phones and social media and things like this. Anyways, I bring up that point because Ajamil's leaving his body thinking of Narayan. What if we leave our body thinking of just some mundane YouTube video that we watched? Is what's our destination going to be? Nothing transcendental, I don't think. But anyways, I think I'm supposed to end because Didi Darshan's coming. So Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam, I don't know if I'm supposed to ask if people have questions. Are there any questions or comments, corrections? If
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
I have a few comments. I want to thank you for an exceptionally wonderful class. It was really, really nice. I particularly loved the glorification of Vishnu Jan Maharaj and Bhakti Tirtha Swami,
Mm,
Sri Radha Damodar. Wonderful to hear. Um, a few quick things. The three types of inattention that you mentioned, I think, well, the three are indifference or apathy, distraction or attraction to other things, and laziness, I think, is the one you
yeah,
were
yeah,
trying
that's
to
the
remember. Yeah. Um, um, yeah, I agree that hearing recordings of Srila Prabhupada, even at night, is a wonderful thing. Um, it's a little bit of a mixed bag because you go to sleep, you're being inattentive, so it's offensive in that way. But I think the benefits outweigh the offense for decades. Actually, for my entire devotional life, um, I have always had Srila Prabhupada playing a recording, playing wherever I am. 24 hours a day. There's always Srila Prabhupada playing while I'm sleeping, bathing, everything I'm doing. Um, my home always, Srila Prabhupada is always playing all of the time, and the effect is wonderful. Your story about phones, um, and that of course is a big issue. A tremendous amount of time is wasted, and much of that time is it's not just waste, but actually contaminating the consciousness. We're actually going backwards rather than making progress by subjecting ourselves to some of these influences. The Srila Prabhupada. I was living in the New York Temple. This was in 1977, I think. Um, um, we had a one teletype machine for the BBT devotees and the Back to Godhead devotees to be able to communicate with one another. A machine that just prints out text, short, simple messages, like a telegram. And the devotees had a question to Srila Prabhupada, should we place one of these in each temple so that we can communicate between temples? And Srila Prabhupada said no, that the devotees would just use it for gossiping. And so later, of course, cell phones became ubiquitous, and devotees do indeed use it for a lot of gossiping and other nonsensical activity. It's terribly wasteful. Srila Prabhupada would never have approved of it. Um, Srila Prabhupada himself, I can think of only one instance in which he used a telephone. Um, there was lots of need for communication between devotees all over the world. It was, if it had to be done quickly, it would be done by telegram and otherwise snail mail. We didn't use telephones. Um, so that's all I've got. Thank you again.
Oh, thank you.
Covered a lot of territory. It was really nice to hear. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much. That was the story I was looking for. Perfect. Thank you. Okay, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hari Bol. Song for you.
Vishaka Lalita Vishaka Shri Radhe Lalita Vishaka Jai Lalita Vishaka Shri Radhe Lalita Jaya Shri Krishna. Jai think about spiritual life, motivation, they never devotional service. God, the blood is speaking prayer over heart. I had place on the cross the emotional material Satan in the beginning revelation of Krishna. The early witness that an account of Saint Spirit, rather than it's not. Blood speaks the perfection of the whole soul of the life. We often find out how you think or how can be dealing with these it's it's trouble. The very scripture says it's the ocean worships, very the poor and the last things. All hands to be restored, to the fish to praise for the I mean, because you should go back to God. But the rest though that they were installed in effect when it's the one that's they really do. And the planning because I know about and we did the 25 and we did it already check the system. It's a when got about how we have been careful because really see the plan right to fully rather than really that to the one and the same one and the right of this. Yeah. So the goal of the last in the very the cheese and it's high level so you don't know. You Papa solo you know. So let me show that the 6 years of the status and you see the bodies and personally so those fact that they were one of the largest contributors to the connection before one to the and and then they decided to United the 70s, not exactly the year. And yeah, so the media was exactly the three month ago, because of the political parties in the year, the flight this year in May. So, so then the working here, this sample is fairly used when we go. We give them the soul back to some food level and looking at them both. Yeah, there's still packages out of tea and that is still and looking all the usual entities in the beginning that we run the ability to live. You know, that are working in the play. You know, you turn in the still in the third grade. So it's one thing that that's a start. That's the but the better important to do that when you are really often you really see things to me. So many things. Is there all of us? So this is us. When you know the focus, Jade, the child of this can work, which work, it is real 40 in offers, and they go then assemble and they should feel that it was something. The child of a great right to take the government. So he's trying to send very well, like, yeah, and the other one is really, yeah, perfectly media. We don't have to see the sound, and then it's kind of really good. Yes, the whole page, you can see the guys, and the here, the here, the the British, you know, investment is very good. You can every year when it's like this, you know, the other it's wow. They say it ain't crazy, not yeah. You need to have it you give out us and you know they come they very close. You go on the time you can probably help see the enrollment rate and the community will see you will feel like money. I know you're going to be powerful. And it's a door for you to become power. See that you can be in a sort of it's all if you be powerful. Where you learn to teach power, wisdom, great. Il programma di chiave, il signore di le solite cose che per farmi uscire, perché io stavo con i miei di vari, non si riusciva. Poi ti mamma non avevo finito, quindi mi viene lontano. Io, ti sai, non male, se livello del formato di denti differenti, ti faccio capire i figli, i vent'anni di famiglia fanno le varie slides, la fonte di sito, testi, del sito. Ti riesci, devo capire, e il nuovo per applicare, non c'è, come fa faccio, se devo fare questo, it's all we learn all the new I know so we people want to learn talk about what to do. Yeah, Gita. that way the things this will be government of the so rather than talk about the state, rather than the reality, this is really powerful. So we do that, we really consider the population. But this really allow it just yeah, but it's all the rules, the government is like the all what's the government with this yes, what it is happening eventually, it is many times, sure that can tell, because that time will be after you balance, she got a content, you think it's stolen, and we can better limits, nothing more solved, not energy is here. You see the things, you know, the into this, you know, when you go to the beginning, go to that. You know, that okay. It's not even about it. You really have to be numbers and you really trying to build the economy so that it's and also this, like about this other things which are playing on their testing we see it. And you already doing the last one, they're already do something learning yeah, that's all is really, you know, chat you have stories of the animal, you know, the always picture that animal and small places, small and large places. Without no harm, it should be doing one. It's not going to be done among the league. No, the common. I don't know. For one worship, yeah, we will find that in the yeah. To make all I was like curiosity, and all of it. In order to hopefully almost knowing how to put that out. But what to really it's not like a reaction. Maybe it's 40 walking up 40,000 so but really yeah. It's it's not really comfortable, it's not really easy. The place is going to be very place. We have a thing of the community on this very to do this. It's a living which can be very we get because the us all of the family people. The unintended is the version. We are it's not found in one family. You know, to be like the man of the data application happen. One is images. The not to the eating them from the yeah. So, yeah, you have to from the saga.